I never talked about this. I never talked about this because I thought that what I did and what I was going through was wrong. I thought I was being unfair to my audience and the people around me by making these changes. I always thought I could never tell my story because if I did, then it would be the end of me and my career. But now I realize that's bullshit. What I did, what I went through, and what I accomplished was astounding, and I shouldn't be ashamed of that. The real truth is that so many people are so afraid of change. Anything that pulls them from their comfort zone often elicits some sort of hostile reaction, like hate or scrutiny, and people grew comfortable with who I was. But I wasn't. So I said, fuck it. I embraced every single one of those fears and just fucking did it anyway. For the first time since starting this entire journey, I can confidently say that I finally have the freedom that I worked so hard for. And honestly, kinda scares the shit out of me.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
You should use they, them pronouns.
And what if I don't? What if I don't?
If you don't, I would consider that disrespectful, and that's actually an act of violence to misgender, trans.
It's an act of violence.
If you're a guy and you won't fuck a trans girl because she has a dick, you're the faggot.
So it's come to my attention that there's been some controversy.
Shut the fuck up.
Thank you.
Sir, motherfucker.
Oh boy, the trans community is a gold mine for controversy. Everyone's got an opinion about it and nobody's gonna change their mind. It's like politics over Thanksgiving dinner, which is no surprise why I haven't talked about it since, well, really ever. I might have said a thing here or there in the comments or on Twitter, mostly Twitter. However, I feel like we've reached a point in society where if someone decides to talk about it, there'll be a massive explosion of exposure, so I'm gonna capitalize on that shit. But for realsies though, I feel like my viewers and the world has waited long enough to hear my story and what I went through. I think that it's about time we talk about it. Trans to me isn't an identity. It's a term, a phrase to describe a process that you endure. And the goal for me wasn't to be biologically recognized as this sex. It wasn't to change my DNA. For me, it was to go from being seen as one gender to being seen as the other. I understand science. I don't care what the fuck people say. Like, oh, now that I know you're trans, I'm just gonna refer to you as you. Who fucking gives a shit? When I go into town, like 99.999% of the people see me as female. I'm treated 100% like a female. No different. Because no one knows. No one has to fucking know. And that's one of the reasons I never wanted to talk about it. Because like, why the fuck would I want to be like, oh, this is what I am when I get to live peacefully without anyone giving a shit? So like I said, I don't really give a flying care if you know what I am, who I am, how I was born. At the end of the day, society treats me one way, and mission accomplished, I've won. So as far as the internet's concerned, by saying, oh, you're biologically male and you can never change. Sure. Okay. But before I go into my story, we're gonna have to start from the beginning. I started as semen. I can't do the same joke twice. We do have to run through a sort of prologue to give the entire timeline some context, I guess you could say. There was a lot that led up to me making this decision. As much as I would love to just jump into, oh, the first day I started hormones, we're gonna start with some of the shit that actually matters. Because as far as I'm concerned, hormones account for about 20% of a transition. They do absolutely little. I don't want to say nothing. They do kind of a lot, but it's very little in the term of like everything you need to do when, you know, changing your gender. This feels so uncomfortable talking about it. Like, I don't know if I should be, but fuck it, you know? Fuck it. How long are we on this fucking planet? I want to tell my story. Fuck it. Fuck it. That's still hot. Fuck it.
New years, new beginnings. See, we all going up, now we winning. Not everyone out there can get it. Not everyone out there can get it. So I'm going through the motions, I'm hoping that they can feel through the
Motherfucker!
I know I poke a lot of fun here and there. But every community is allowed to have their goofs, okay? Crazy GameStop girl. It's probably my favorite goof of all time, honestly. That's my favorite goof. Anywho, before we get into any of the aforementioned, we have to be able to define what trans meant for me. The word transgender means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I don't want you guys to watch this with the perspective that trans has some sort of universal meaning. And a great example of this would be how my definition of trans would greatly differ from someone who's non-binary. I'm personally not non-binary. That doesn't mean I don't support non-binary people, I just don't know what it feels like to be that. And so the way I define trans for myself is going to be vastly different from what trans means to them. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And with that in mind, let's go through and define what it meant for me. There's sort of a long timeline of everything that I did to mold that definition for myself. I just got a Snapchat. I had to do like 3 takes of that line, and that was the first time I got it. God damn it. There was a lot that I had to do to really solidify what it meant for me. And I'm not gonna go too in depth because I eventually got to one answer, and that one answer was, trans is not an identity. And I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the video, but I never looked at the word trans and said, that's what I am. When I saw the word trans, I thought, that's what I have to go through. That's the process that I have to put myself through. I never once identified as trans. I still don't. I don't want to be a transgender. I mean, to some people I always will be, but like you can't win every battle. The only people that you should keep in your life are the ones that understand who you are and love you for it. My identity for me is everything that I am. My personality, my experiences, my stories. It would be a disservice to the person that I am to say that's who I am. I'm trans. No, I'm fucking Bree. So for all the young trans folk watching, define it for yourself. Do your research, do experimentation, do some self-discovery, because it's just not a universal term. And don't ever think that it is. Don't ever think that you have to be like any other trans person or any other transition or any other timeline, because yours is going to be so fucking unique that by the time you're getting on the latter portion of the hardest parts of it, you'll wonder why the fuck you even compared yourself to anyone else. Speaking of self-discovery,
Death.
I'm hoping that through telling you my story and my experiences, you're able to take the bits and pieces from what I've gone through and apply them to your own journey. I don't like giving matter-of-fact advice or telling anyone what to do, because everybody's situation is different. It's all case by case. But if I have endured something that's very similar to something you might be going through, I learned a lot by just watching other people, and I really hope that I can do the same to those who might be struggling. But outside of that, let's talk a little bit about self-discovery. The entirety of a transition is self-discovery. There's never a minute that goes by that you're not learning shit about yourself. It's like a mushroom trip that lasts 3 years, minus the moving swirling walls and the fractals and the sweating. Self-discovery happens at its own pace. It's very dependent on the person and how interested they are in getting in touch with that aspect of themselves. A lot of people just prefer to live ignorantly to how they feel. I don't really settle for that though. I don't know how long I'm gonna be on this planet, and I want to be as happy as I can while I'm here. That being said, when I grew up, I just sort of did whatever the fuck I wanted. My parents didn't care. I didn't really have a gender role in the house because it was just like, kids being kids. Let them do whatever they want. I played with Littlest Pet Shops and Polly Pockets with my sister. I loved robots and tanks and video games. God, I loved my Nintendo 64. I was able to just have fun. Raw, unfiltered, childlike fun. And my early childhood was kind of awesome that way. My parents never tried to solidify like a gender role with me. They never tried to make me behave or act a certain way. And this was the case up until around middle school. If you live in America, you know that middle school is when everything goes downhill. Now, I'm not trying to delve into some controversy here. I'm not trying to break down gender stereotypes. I'm just saying objectively, as you start to get older and move on to middle school, gender stereotypes are taken a lot more seriously. You're sort of told how to act and behave. There are dances where like you're supposed to ask a date to go with you, and you know, everyone's getting in a relationship, so people are telling me to get a girlfriend, and it just, none of it felt right. It was obscenely uncomfortable. And this is when a lot of my sadness and depression really started to consume like my personality. I went to school in a rural, I can't say rural. I'm not even like, I'm not doing this for entertainment, like I actually can't say rural. rural. I went to school in a rural farm town out in Colorado. And so, you know, all the kids I was surrounded by were very traditional because they all had very traditional families. So I didn't really have any like open-minded like food for thought, I guess, as I was growing up. There wasn't anything that planted these seeds of like, well, could you be a girl, really? What's your sexuality? It was just kind of like, it was just all one way, you know? And if you weren't that, then it's like, I was bullied. I mean, I was really vulnerable to bullies because I had fragile feminine emotions, and Jesus Christ, God forbid you have that in middle school. So I had to deal with a lot of that, and it just really piled on over the years. Like, I got crazy depressed. I isolated a lot in my room. And it got to the point where I didn't like leaving my room outside of school. I would just wake up, go to school, come home, play video games, hide away, isolate, and go to bed and rinse and repeat. I ate a lot of cheese fries. I remember that specifically. While I was isolating, you know, I started to get like real into YouTube, and I've always been sort of a creator ever since I was like even really young. But like, you know, YouTube started to become more of a thing. I was watching a lot of YouTubers, and I got to see their rise to like actual stardom. And it sort of brewed this like motivation in me because I would see these YouTubers being loved by thousands of people, and here I am in this shitty farm town being hated by pretty much everyone I was around. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was never happy with myself, and in turn that just made me vulnerable in school, and in turn that just made me miserable. I thought if I had thousands of people watching the things that I made, if I had thousands of people that loved me, that I would learn to love myself. But I didn't know any better. I was a kid. I just saw these people being loved by fans, and I wanted to be loved like that. It was shallow at the time, I'm not gonna lie. And my reasoning for wanting to be famous was literally just to be famous and popular. And it's not the right reason. I know that now it's not the right reason to have done that, but I did not know any better. So that's what I did. And lo and behold, it didn't make anything better. I became a little egotistical when it first started to like actually happen. A lot of my peers in school would come up to me and be like, hey, like you have this channel now, can you help me out on YouTube? And I'd be like, nope. Like that was a little gratifying, but like it didn't fulfill me. Like it didn't make me happier. It just was a little vengeful. And anyway, I was able to achieve a good portion of what I was looking for, and the emotions still didn't go away. That's when I really started to like think in depth. Like I spent a lot of time in my room, alone, in the silence, just thinking. It wasn't too long after that I stumbled across a story. It was a story about how a guy woke up as a girl one day, and all the funny shenanigans that sort of came along with that. I'm not going to say the story specifically, it's kind of just a me thing. I could not stop reading that story. I would read it over and over and over again, and that portion of me that always felt like it was missing seemed to like feel something. Like the muscle was being flexed every time I read this story. I couldn't explain it. I didn't know what it was, but it was addicting. I wished I was the person in the story every fucking day. Anyway, I started to really do my research. I went to a lot of different places looking to see if I could put a word to what I was experiencing. And I found the words like transgender, transvestite, sex change. I didn't really feel like any of that applied to me because all these stories were so vastly different from my own. And it took a long time before I realized what it actually was. I was just a girl. And you know, we live in a society where like people, you know, it's not terribly uncommon to hear that nowadays. But this was during a time where the word transgender was just usually associated with nothing more than drag shows on a Sunday evening at gay bars. Transvestite was sort of the term you would hear most of the time when referring to that sort of thing. And when I realized that none of those were an identity, when I realized that I was just a girl, that's when like everything made sense. And that's when the self-discovery really started to pick up. That's when I was like, oh shit, like it makes sense now. I'm gonna start trying different things. I started like role playing and like a female role just to see how it felt. And that also brings forth the interesting dynamic that a lot of people ask me about. How the fuck did I do it in front of thousands of people? Because I figured this whole thing out pretty much almost exactly when I started to get popular on YouTube. I made a lot of hints about it in old videos. I used to make I literally made an entire video foreshadowing what I knew was going to happen.
All right, buddy, you act like you haven't seen yourself before. No, but I mean, like, how are you? I'm you from the future.
It's kind of a genius video, to be honest. The whole prospect was horrifying, but it wasn't something that I needed to worry about right away. I postponed so many steps just because I thought it would be the end of everything I worked to build. It wasn't really a big deal at this time because I was able to finally make some sense of what I was feeling, to give myself a little bit of guidance. For a long time, I never thought I was going to live past the age of 18 because I could never get rid of these feelings. And for the first time, I felt like I can see myself living as an adult, alone, independently, if I can live as a girl. That being said, once the novelty wore off that I finally understood who I was, I had to start making moves. And making moves usually means getting your butt out of the closet.
Good evening. The family of a young transgender teen is speaking out tonight after he took his own life earlier this month.
The death of an Ohio teenager has sparked national outrage.
Half of all transgender students in Colorado high schools is bullied.
Prevalence of suicide attempts in the transgender community is 41%.
That's 40%. 4 out of every 10 trans people will attempt suicide in their lifetime. 4 out of 10.
I would have thought in 2017, maybe I just hoped that in 2017 we would be done arguing about birth certificates, but obviously we're not.
I've refilmed this portion like 4 times, and my throat hurts so bad. I'm just eating ice cubes. Stupid fucking pink beanie. It's a staple now. Gotta have it on. Because I've been wearing it through the whole thing. Gotta have continuity, right? Gotta get the hair just right. That works. So I made all these discoveries about myself, but now it was time to act on them. And the first step to that is usually coming out. It's probably the hardest step, because you have to confront everybody. Everybody who's known you as who you've pretended to be for so long. You have to break their hearts. They're gonna mourn the loss of someone that they thought that they knew. Almost as if that person had died, but not in a bad way, I guess. It shows you who your real friends are. The people that are gonna stick by you as you go through one of the most trying times of your life. When I first came out, it was to one of my close friends at the time. And I went to dinner with them, and I sort of prefaced the conversation and kept hinting at it, and he's just like, come on, just tell me what it is. Are you gay? And I was like, not entirely. It was really a perspective changing moment because he came from a more conservative, traditional family, but he was so supportive and so understanding and so curious about what he could do to help me and further my quality of life. It was unbelievable. Like, I didn't think I deserved a friend like that. It was the first time I had felt that comfortable to tell someone that wasn't my mom something so close, something so sacred. And the next person I came out to after that was my mom. It took probably a couple more weeks after I initially came out to my friend to come out to my mom. I remember that night so vividly, like it could have just been last week. She was watching TV in her room, and I walked in and I was like, hey mom, can we have a little talk? And she's like, yeah, what's up, little douchebag? And so we sat down on the bed and I was like, I think that I'm a girl in a guy's body. And she didn't get it at first. Like it took her a few explanations for her to really understand what I was trying to say. And at one point she was just like, so you want to be treated like a girl and dress up like a girl and do girl things? And I was like, yeah. Are you sure you're not just super gay? No, mom. Like, I mean, you know, you have some cousins that go to drag shows at the gay bars. Like, Jesus Christ, mom, it's not like that. No, it's all right. I would support you either way. I've just never heard of this before. I haven't really heard of it much either up until recently. But are you sure that you're not just really gay? Mom, Jesus Christ. It was a pretty funny little exchange, actually. But she was crazy supportive, and like I couldn't have asked for better parents throughout this whole thing. I mean, some people are burdened with parents that don't really accept them or support them, and that honestly just sounds like a nightmare. I personally can't sympathize with that because my parents were so supportive and loving through every step of it, and I can't imagine what someone has to go through when their own parents don't accept them for who they are. If you're going through that, please reach out to people. Reach out to support groups, or just try to establish a network of people that really love you for who you are. Because if you feel isolated, like no one loves you, and that you can't be yourself around other people, then it'll destroy you. It'll eat you up inside, and no one deserves to go through that. From there, my coming out just sort of snowballed. I got a little desensitized to it, and I just told people sort of, carelessly because I got the hardest ones out of the way. Anyway, with the information out there, my next step was to hunt down a therapist because I wanted to be able to discover more about what these feelings meant. I knew what I was feeling and I knew who I was at this point, but I really wanted to elaborate on like why this was happening. And I really wanted to get some more information from someone who was well versed in gender topics. So I saw a therapist and I'm still seeing them to this day. I've been seeing them for a very long time. It's been almost 7 years, 6 or 7 years at this point. They've honestly have gotten me through like the most trying times. Like, guys, if you have access to it, like if you're able to and you have the means and you're questioning all these aspects of yourself, please, for the love of God, go and see a therapist if you can. And so I'd been seeing my therapist and pretty much the next step after that was to start my transition. But I kept postponing it because I was so fucking terrified. I felt like there were still a lot of outlets I could try to help quell those emotions without doing things that were irreversible. And for a good few years, I was able to get away with using the short fixes, stuff like online roleplay or just having my friends refer to me as a name. It did a little bit for a little while, but it never really got me to the point of feeling like I was actually fulfilled. So time passed, I continued to hide from my emotions and my viewers and the inevitable, until a point came where I hit a fork in the road. My life had one big ultimatum. I couldn't live on this planet anymore as a guy. I couldn't do it. It got to a point where it was just so agonizing going into public every day, being the wrong person, sounding like the wrong person, looking like the wrong person. I couldn't do it. I tried to convince myself that it was just some other mental illness. And maybe it was, but I didn't know anymore. I was done trying. I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep trying to find solutions that weren't the one that I knew was going to have to happen. So my two options were transition or die. Like, I legit spent a disturbing amount of time thinking about ways to end my life. But with nothing left to lose at a certain point, I realized, why not? Why not just try it? Why not just try transitioning? No matter how scary it seemed, no matter how many people might hate me, there was the possibility that it just might fucking work. I didn't believe it would. When I made the decision to transition, I thought for sure that it was stupid and that I was just gonna end up dying anyway. But obviously that's not the case. Spoilers. So that's when I started my preparation to change every aspect of me, to completely overhaul my life. And honestly, I'm so thankful that I had no idea what to expect making this decision. Because if I had seen all the complications that would have come with this transition, our house flooding and getting destroyed, me having to drop out of college so that I could do YouTube full time to pay for a place to live because our house was destroyed, my hormone doctor fleeing the country, my friend injecting me with air instead of hormones, the surgeries, the pain. If I had known any of this before going in, I don't know if I would have done it. But thank God I was as ignorant as I was, because I don't regret any of it. One question remained though. How the fuck was I going to pursue this transition without having any of my thousands of viewers find out about it? But we'll get into all that in the next video. This video was to touch on everything pre-transition. I consider some of this stuff the most important, because it's one thing to take pills or put yourself on an operating table, but it's a whole different monster to have to look at yourself and tell yourself that you're not happy. Tell yourself that this isn't who you are. And tell yourself that you have to change. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this. Thank you for wanting to hear my story. Thank you for all the support. Thanks for all the love and understanding. I never expected that I would receive as much love as I did. I thought it was the end of everything, but you guys just showed me it was a new beginning. You guys are the reason that I was able to change my life. You guys are the reason that I'm happy. And I don't think that there's any way that I could ever repay you guys. Son of a bitch. I did so good with my makeup too. Guys are making me fucking cry and shit. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next part. Be sure to subscribe to Breehive because I can't think of a valid reason. Just subscribe. I like seeing numbers go up. I'll see you guys in the next part in a few weeks. I'm not sure how to sign off, so I'm just gonna click stop recording. Click and scroll, I can't let